In the world of marine biology, patience isn't just a virtue, it is the fundamental law of survival. When you are trying to cultivate a living coral reef in a captive environment, you are fighting against millions of years of evolution. You are controlling the salinity, the calcium levels, and the microscopic trace elements down to the fraction of a part per million. If you rush the process, the polyps die. If you change the temperature by 2 degrees, the coral bleaches and turns into a lifeless white skeleton. A true reef grows by only a few millimeters a year. It requires a level of obsessive, quiet devotion that most people cannot even begin to comprehend. I spent my entire life learning how to keep incredibly fragile, beautiful things alive in hostile environments. I just never realized that while I was obsessively monitoring the toxicity levels in my water tanks, the toxicity levels in my own marriage were quietly reaching a lethal, catastrophic threshold. My name is Silas. I'm 36 years old and I am a master aquascaper and marine biologist. I specialize in designing and maintaining massive, multi-million-dollar exotic aquatic ecosystems for private collectors and international aquariums. 5 years ago, I married Chloe. Chloe was a high-powered VIP events coordinator and PR director for the luxury hospitality industry. She was magnetic, fiercely ambitious, and entirely consumed by the glamorous, champagne-soaked culture of high society. I was the introverted scientist who spent 12 hours a day in a humid warehouse smelling like synthetic sea salt and algae. We were complete opposites, but I thought we were building an empire together. She sold the aesthetic and I engineered the life support. For 6 grueling years, I poured every single weekend, every holiday, and every ounce of my personal savings into my absolute magnum opus. I called it Project Abyss. It was a 5,000-gallon, self-sustaining coral reef ecosystem, but it wasn't just any coral. Through incredibly complex genetic isolation and specific nutrient dosing, I had cultivated a massive, thriving colony of bioluminescent marine life. When the overhead lights went out, the entire reef glowed with a hypnotic, pulsing neon blue and emerald green light. It was a living, breathing, biological masterpiece. It was a technological and natural holy grail that mega casinos and billionaires were spending tens of millions of dollars trying to replicate. Appraisers estimated the biological value and the proprietary filtration patents at roughly $5 million. I promised Chloe this tank was our golden ticket. I told her that when I finally perfected the stabilization matrix, we would license the technology and she would never have to hustle for a hospitality client ever again. We would be set for life. But Chloe didn't want to wait for the coral to grow. She looked at my water-stained hands and my exhausted eyes, and she decided she didn't want to share the multi-million-dollar payout with a biologist. She wanted the gold, the glory, and the spotlight, and she found a corporate shark who was more than happy to help her drain my tank. The focus of our marriage started to blur when Chloe's indie production company was bought out by a massive, highly funded Hollywood studio. The CEO and lead director of that studio was a man named Sterling. Sterling was 45 years old and the absolute poster boy for Hollywood arrogance. He wore custom velvet jackets, drove a matte black Ferrari, and treated brilliant artists and technicians like disposable minimum wage laborers. He was a guy who relied entirely on massive budgets to cover up the fact that he was a terrible storyteller. In my industry, guys like Sterling are considered absolute parasites. Suddenly, Chloe was spending all her time at Sterling's massive studio lot in Burbank, claiming she was advising him on a massive $40 million sci-fi epic. The red flags didn't just quietly appear, they flared up like a massive light leak in a darkroom. First, the profound, unapologetic disrespect. Chloe started actively belittling my life's work. "Julian, you need to wake up," she scoffed one evening, tossing her $4,000 designer handbag onto our kitchen counter. Sterling manages a $100 million production budget. He builds entire worlds. You've been sitting in a basement polishing pieces of glass for 4 years and haven't made a single dime. You lack corporate vision. Nobody cares about your optical physics. They care about who owns the box office. Second, the intense secrecy regarding her devices. Chloe changed the passcode on her laptop and her iPad. She started taking phone calls in her car, sitting in the driveway with the engine running for 40 minutes before coming inside the house. Third, and by far the most terrifying, was her sudden, highly specific interest in my laboratory vault. Chloe, a woman who absolutely loathed the smell of the chemicals in my clean room, suddenly asked me exactly when the final Aether lenses would be assembled and if the proprietary optical blueprints were stored on a portable hard drive. When an ambitious Hollywood producer suddenly asks about the portability of a $3 million unpatented engineering file, you don't answer the question. You check the focal length and you zoom in on the problem. When you keep a $3 million set of proprietary optics in your laboratory, you don't rely on a simple padlock. My entire facility was routed through a custom telemetry mainframe that logged every single motion, temperature shift, and data transfer on the local network. One Saturday night, while Chloe was supposedly at a weekend casting retreat in Malibu, my phone vibrated with a critical priority alert from the lab. I pulled my car into an empty parking lot, opened the secure app, and tapped into the network feed. Someone was actively attempting to execute a mass file transfer from my local CAD server to an unauthorized external flash drive. I artificially slowed the transfer speed to a crawl, bypassed her flimsy local VPN, and mirrored her laptop screen directly to my iPad. She had her encrypted messaging app open, communicating directly with Sterling. I didn't just find an affair. I found a premeditated, multi-million-dollar corporate heist. Sterling wrote, "The studio executives just looked at the test footage you sneaked out last week. They are completely losing their minds. The light refraction is 10 years ahead of anything IMAX or ARI has. If we shoot my new $40 million sci-fi epic on these lenses and claim I invented the optical formula, the camera companies will buy the patents from my holding company for $100 million. Have you secured the physical lenses and the blueprints yet?" Chloe replied, her words dripping with a casual, horrifying cruelty that made the blood freeze in my veins. "I'm copying the master optical files from his server right now. Tomorrow, when he goes to the engineering symposium in Seattle for 3 days, I'll take the heavy flight cases with the 6 physical lenses. We'll tell Julian that there was a chemical fire in the lab and the glass shattered from the heat. He'll be completely devastated, but he won't be able to prove a thing. We shoot the movie, I serve him with divorce papers on opening night, and we'll be on your yacht in Cabo. He's just a naive glass polisher, Sterling. He won't be able to fight your studio lawyers." Sterling responded, "You're a visionary, my love. The glass polisher is going to fund our entire empire." I sat alone in the dark, staring at the glowing screen as my entire reality shattered into a million pieces. My wife of 6 years was sleeping with a corporate parasite. Together, they were actively plotting to steal my life's work, hijack my $3 million masterpiece, intentionally sabotage my lab, shoot a massive Hollywood blockbuster, and leave me utterly destroyed while they became mega millionaires. They thought I was just a naive glass polisher. They didn't understand the level of absolute, unmitigated optical destruction a master engineer is capable of fabricating. If you want to destroy a corrupt filmmaker, you don't smash his cameras. You let him secure the funding, hire the actors, spend $40 million shooting the movie, and then you quietly ensure the final picture is an absolute nightmare. I didn't confront her. If I did, Sterling's army of studio lawyers would bury me in injunctions, claim Chloe was a legal partner in my business, and tie the lenses up in court for a decade until I went bankrupt. I needed them to steal the lenses. I needed Sterling to proudly shoot an entire feature film on them, and I needed him to project it in front of the most elite critics in the world. So I went to work on the physics of light. I took the 6 priceless, flawless Aether lenses and placed them into my femtosecond laser engraving machine. A femtosecond laser is so precise it can alter the internal structure of glass without damaging the surface. I spent 48 hours programming the laser to burn a microscopic, phase-shifting diffraction grating deep inside the internal fluorite element of every single lens. It was a stroke of dark optical genius. To the naked eye, the lenses looked completely flawless. When Sterling and his massive camera crew mounted them to their digital cinema cameras on set, the footage would look breathtaking. When the editors color graded the film on their standard 32-inch LCD and OLED studio monitors, the image would be crystal clear and perfect. But a phase-shifting diffraction grating reacts to only one specific extreme light source. It reacts to the massive 35,000 lumen dual laser projection systems used exclusively in premium, large format commercial movie theaters like IMAX screens at Hollywood premieres. When that specific, incredibly intense laser light hit the digital rendering of the footage on the massive screen, the microscopic grating baked into the raw files would forcefully diffract the light. It would visually split the image, projecting a massive, inescapable holographic watermark straight across the center of the 80-foot screen. I packed the rigged lenses into their heavy Pelican slide cases. I left the cloned blueprints on my server. The next morning, I packed my bags for the symposium in Seattle. I kissed Chloe goodbye. "Have a great trip, Julian," she smiled, handing me my coffee. "Take care of the lab, Chloe. You know those lenses are my masterpiece." "I'll guard them with my life," she promised. I drove away. I let her steal the bomb. Now, they just had to press record. I didn't go to Seattle. I flew straight to the downtown offices of the most aggressive intellectual property and entertainment litigator in California. I handed him my original, time-stamped optical formulas, the raw CAD blueprints, and the crystal-clear iCloud transcripts of Chloe and Sterling explicitly conspiring to commit grand larceny, insurance fraud, and massive corporate espionage. My lawyer smiled like a shark smelling blood in the water. "Julian," he said, "Sterling is using a stolen, heavily patented technological asset to secure $40 million in venture capital and solicit a $100 million buyout from a major camera corporation. That isn't just theft. That is massive federal securities fraud and copyright infringement." We officially registered the true patents with the U.S. Patent Office, establishing an indisputable, federally protected paper trail of my absolute ownership. But we didn't file the injunctions. We didn't send a cease and desist. "Let them shoot the movie," I told my lawyer. "Let them spend the $40 million. Let him invite the studio executives to the premiere. I want him to put his face on it." Over the next 4 months, I watched from a distance. Chloe executed her plan perfectly. She intentionally smashed several glass beakers and set a small controlled chemical fire in my lab to fake the accident. I played the devastated husband perfectly. Meanwhile, Sterling shot his epic sci-fi movie. He bragged to the press about his revolutionary custom lenses. He hyped up the premiere. He spent millions on marketing. They were building a massive, glittering glass castle on a red carpet, and I had given them the hammer to shatter it.
Friday night, the world premiere in Hollywood. Sterling had packed the massive 900-seat theater with A-list actors, major studio executives, ruthless film critics, and the billionaire representatives from the Camera Corporation who were prepared to offer him $100 million for the lens patents. I sat in my dark hotel room watching the red carpet livestream on my laptop. I poured myself 2 fingers of very expensive bourbon. Sterling strutted down the carpet in a custom tuxedo, absolutely dripping with unearned confidence. Chloe was standing right next to him, wearing a $10,000 gown, looking incredibly proud, waiting for her payday. The live stream ended as the guests took their seats inside the theater, but thanks to the subsequent industry reports, police records, and furious social media leaks from the audience, I know exactly how the execution went down. The lights dimmed. The 35,000-lumen dual laser IMAX projector roared to life. The massive 80-foot screen lit up with the opening shot of Sterling's $40 million epic. For the first 5 seconds, the crowd gasped. The image quality was breathtaking. The light flares were ethereal. But the moment the intense laser light hit the raw footage, the microscopic diffraction grating I baked into the glass executed its payload. The light violently split and refracted. Suddenly, a massive, glaring, unavoidable holographic text box materialized, burning brightly directly across the center of the 80-foot screen, completely covering the actors' faces. In stark, blinding white letters, it read, "Stolen intellectual property. These lenses were stolen from Julian, last name, Sterling, last name, and Chloe, last name, committed corporate espionage. Sterling is a fraud." The entire theater went dead, pin drop silent. On the screen, the movie continued playing, but the massive glowing confession remained permanently burned across the center of every single frame of the film. Sterling froze in the front row, his jaw dropping. He jumped out of his seat and frantically screamed at the projection booth, "Cut the feed! Turn it off! It's a hack! Stop the projector!" But it wasn't a digital hack. It was baked permanently into the light of the raw footage. The movie was physically unwatchable. The studio executives in the VIP section stood up in absolute disgust. The representatives from the Camera Corporation realized instantly they were being dragged into a multi-million-dollar federal theft case. "This is stolen technology?" one of the executives roared at Sterling, his voice echoing in the dark theater. "You defrauded us for $40 million. Chloe dropped her champagne glass. It shattered on the carpet. Her hands went over her mouth, her face turning the color of wet concrete, looking like she was going to pass out. The A-list celebrities and critics pulled out their phones, snapping photos of the screen and live tweeting the disaster. Before Sterling's security could even attempt to escort him out the back door, the heavy doors of the theater burst open. Federal agents from the FBI's white-collar crime division marched directly down the center aisle. I took a slow, deeply satisfying sip of my bourbon, smiled at the glowing city lights out my window, and sent a text to my lawyer. Roll the credits.
You cannot fix an optical physics equation in post-production. The fallout was an absolute, unmitigated corporate massacre. The photos of the 80-foot confession went viral globally within 10 minutes. Sterling was arrested in the lobby of the Chinese theater for massive federal wire fraud, attempted corporate espionage, and defrauding investors out of $40 million. Because the watermark was baked into the raw footage, the entire $40 million movie was completely ruined. Reshooting it would cost another $40 million. The studio investors immediately sued Sterling into absolute oblivion. His production company collapsed, his assets were seized by the federal government, and he was facing 15 years in federal prison. Chloe's life was vaporized. Sterling, realizing he was facing decades behind bars, immediately blamed her. He told the FBI that she was a rogue producer who supplied him with the stolen lenses and forged the documents, throwing her to the wolves to save himself. She was arrested before she even made it back to our house. She called me from a federal holding cell, sobbing so hard she was hyperventilating. Julian, please, the FBI is here. The movie is ruined. You have to tell them you made a mistake with the glass. Please, I'll do anything. I didn't make a mistake, Chloe, I said calmly, leaning back in my lab chair. I gave you exactly what you stole. You just forgot to test the glass under a laser projector. I read your messages, by the way. I hope you enjoy the red carpet in federal court. I hung up and blocked her number. During our divorce settlement, she had absolutely zero leverage. Because she was a federally indicted felon facing charges for conspiring to steal a $3 million marital asset and commit insurance fraud, the judge showed zero mercy. He awarded me 100% of our marital assets, the house, and my entire laboratory. She walked away with millions in legal debt and a permanently ruined life.
It's been almost 3 years since that premiere in Hollywood. A month after the arrests, the major camera corporation reached out to me directly. They had seen the absolute genius of the optical trap I built. I sold the real, unsabotaged patents to them for $12 million, plus royalties. I paid off all my debts, bought a massive new commercial optical facility, and I now build bespoke cinema lenses for the greatest, most respected directors in the world. I never have to answer to a corporate boss or worry about funding ever again. Last I heard, Chloe avoided prison by taking a plea deal and testifying against Sterling, but she is completely blacklisted from the entertainment industry globally. She is currently working at a budget movie theater in the suburbs, sweeping up popcorn and watching people watch movies, knowing every single day that she held a masterpiece and willingly threw it away. Sterling is currently serving 8 years in a federal penitentiary, completely bankrupt, his Hollywood empire reduced to a punchline. If there is a lesson to be learned here, it's this. A beautiful image means absolutely nothing if the lens capturing it is corrupt. If your partner thinks they can use you as a stepping stone, steal your genius, and leave you in the dark while they take the applause, don't panic, don't fight them for the cameras. Smile, hand them the flight case, and let them confidently roll the cameras in front of the whole world. And right when they think they've hit the big time, turn on the projector and watch the light completely destroy them. Thanks for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this one, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments, what's the most satisfying public humiliation you've ever seen? Stay sharp, trust the physics, and always check the gloss.